Number Earth's Message to the Galaxy. No More Mercy. Part 3. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Ambassador Zethkar stood before the assembled representatives, his ceremonial crystals flickering between colors of distress and anger, as he delivered his report on what was now being called the Kepler incident. "Honored Council," he began, his voice strained with the weight of unprecedented failure. "I must inform you that our integration protocols have encountered complications." A wave of concerned pheromones and electromagnetic chatter swept through the chamber. The word complications had never been applied to a hegemony integration operation in living memory. Fleet Admiral Korax's force engaged the human colony at Kepler 442 as planned, Zethkar continued, consulting his datapad with visible reluctance. The humans responded with weapons, technology, and tactics that exceeded all intelligence projections. We suffered casualties of over 200 ships in what should have been a simple suppression operation. Council member Thrix's vine-like appendages writhed in distress. 200 ships? That's impossible. Our reports indicated the humans possessed only primitive defensive capabilities. Our reports, Zethkar admitted with bitter honesty, were deliberately fabricated by the humans themselves. They have spent the past 50 cycles systematically deceiving our intelligence operations while building a military force that currently numbers in the tens of thousands of ships. The chamber erupted in cacophonous debate. Species that had spent centuries under peaceful hegemony guidance couldn't comprehend the concept of systematic deception on such a scale. The very idea that a primitive species could fool the galaxy's most advanced intelligence services challenged everything they understood about technological superiority. Speaker Vexilla raised all four arms for silence. "Ambassador Zethkar, are you suggesting that this species has been preparing for war with the hegemony for 50 cycles, while presenting a facade of peaceful development?" "That is exactly what I'm suggesting," Zethkar replied. "Moreover, their response to our integration attempt was not defensive in nature. It was aggressively hostile. They showed no interest in negotiation, no willingness to consider the benefits of guidance. They simply attacked." Council member Viridian's crystalline form shifted to deep purple hues of confusion. "But surely once they understood our peaceful intentions, once they realized we were offering them advancement and prosperity, they must have reconsidered?" Zethkar's crystals flashed red with frustrated memory. "Honored council member, I fear you don't understand the fundamental nature of what we're dealing with. The humans don't want advancement. They don't want prosperity under our guidance. They want independence, even if it means living in comparative poverty and danger." The concept was so alien to most council members that several translation matrices crashed trying to process it. Species throughout the galaxy had universally welcomed hegemony guidance once they understood the benefits. The idea of actively rejecting technological and social advancement was beyond their comprehension. "What are you recommending?" Speaker Vexilla asked, though her tone suggested growing dread about the answer. "The humans have made their position clear," Zethkar replied. "They consider any attempt at integration to be an act of war. They have demonstrated both the capability and willingness to inflict massive casualties on our forces. Fleet Admiral Korax is requesting authorization for total mobilization protocols." The phrase total mobilization sent shockwaves through the chamber. It hadn't been used in over 3,000 cycles, not since the Void Dweller conflicts that had nearly shattered galactic civilization. Total mobilization meant converting the hegemony's entire industrial base to military production and calling up reserves from every member species. "Surely that's excessive," protested Council Member Kelvin of the Merchant Guild. "They're one species with a few thousand ships. We have the combined resources of 12,000 star systems. With respect," Zethkar replied, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen human capabilities firsthand. "I don't think you understand what we're facing. The humans don't fight like any species we've encountered. They don't seek to minimize casualties or preserve infrastructure. They weaponize everything, including their own deaths." He activated a holographic display showing footage from the Kepler battle. The assembled council members watched in horrified fascination as human ships deliberately rammed into hegemony vessels after their weapons were exhausted. They saw human defense platforms detonate with the force of small suns, rather than surrender. They witnessed tactics that prioritized inflicting maximum damage over self-preservation. This behavior pattern is consistent across all human military encounters in their history, Zethkar explained as the footage continued. They have a concept they call Pyrrhic victory, winning at such great cost that the victory becomes meaningless. But they also have a counter-concept called making them pay, losing in such a way that the winner's victory becomes too expensive to justify. The implications began to sink in among the more militarily minded council members. If humanity was willing to fight with such intensity across their entire territory, the cost of integration could exceed anything the hegemony had ever contemplated. What about economic pressure? Suggested Council Member Vax of the Trade Confederation. We could implement a complete economic blockade. Cut them off from galactic trade routes. Surely they would reconsider when faced with isolation and resource scarcity. Zethkar's crystals flickered with dark amusement. Honored Council Member. The humans have been operating under the assumption of complete economic isolation since their first contact with us. Every human colony is designed to be completely self-sufficient. They produce their own food, manufacture their own equipment, and maintain their own technology base. A blockade would inconvenience them, but it wouldn't force compliance. Council Member Thrix swayed her appendages thoughtfully. Perhaps we're approaching this incorrectly. Could we negotiate some form of compromise? Allow them limited autonomy in exchange for acknowledgement of hegemony authority? We tried that approach, Zethkar admitted. Admiral Korax offered to limit integration to their outer colonies, while allowing Earth and the inner systems to maintain local governance under hegemony oversight. The humans' response was to increase their mobilization rate and begin fortifying their home system with weapons capable of sterilizing planets. The chamber fell silent as the scope of humanity's intransigence became clear. They weren't dealing with a species that wanted better terms or more favorable conditions. They were dealing with a species that flatly rejected the entire concept of external authority. What exactly do they want from us? Speaker Vexilla asked. Complete withdrawal from their territory, Zethkar replied. No monitoring, no oversight, no interference of any kind. They want to be left alone to develop as they see fit, even if that development leads to self-destruction or poses a threat to galactic stability. The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything the hegemony represented. For 10,000 cycles, they had maintained galactic peace through the simple principle that advanced civilizations guided primitive ones toward enlightenment. The idea of simply allowing a species to develop independently, with all the risks that entailed, violated their fundamental understanding of responsible governance. And if we refuse? Asked Council Member Viridian. Then we face a war unlike anything in our recorded history, Zethkar admitted. The humans have made it clear they will fight with every resource they possess. Intelligence reports suggest they are already mobilizing their civilian population for military production. They are converting civilian infrastructure to weapons manufacturing. They are preparing for total war. The debate that followed lasted for 18 hours and represented the most contentious discussion in Galactic Council history. Some members argued for immediate total mobilization, viewing humanity as an existential threat to galactic order. Others advocated for withdrawal, pointing out that the cost of integration might exceed its benefits. A significant minority proposed alternative approaches ranging from cultural infiltration to technological sabotage. In the end, the decision came down to a fundamental question about the nature of civilization itself. Was it acceptable to allow a species to reject guidance, even if that rejection might lead to their own destruction or threaten others? Could the hegemony maintain its authority if it allowed even one species to successfully defy integration? The vote was closer than anyone expected, but the outcome was inevitable. The hegemony had not maintained 10,000 years of peace by backing down from challenges to their authority. Total mobilization was authorized by a margin of just 200 votes. What the Council didn't know was that human intelligence networks had been monitoring their deliberations through infiltrated communication systems and bribed sources throughout hegemony space. By the time the vote was concluded, Admiral Chen already had the full details of what was coming. The scale of the approaching threat was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. The hegemony was calling up fleets from across the galaxy, mobilizing the combined military might of 12,000 star systems. Intelligence projections suggested an invasion force of over 1 million ships, supported by industrial capacity that dwarfed human production by several orders of magnitude. But Admiral Chen had not been idle during the months since first contact. Humanity's preparations had accelerated beyond even the most optimistic projections. Hidden shipyards throughout human space were operating around the clock. Military academies were graduating officers at unprecedented rates. Civilian populations were volunteering for military service in numbers that strained training facilities. More importantly, humanity was no longer alone in their resistance to hegemony authority. The brutal suppression of the Kepler colony had been witnessed by several unintegrated species in the Outer Rim territories. For the first time in millennia, other civilizations were beginning to question whether hegemony guidance was as benevolent as advertised. The Tauri had been among the first to make contact with human representatives. Their own integration had been scheduled for the following cycle. But the footage from Kepler had prompted serious reconsideration of their options. Within weeks, secret negotiations had produced a mutual defense pact that brought 47 Tauri ships under joint human command. The Zephyrians followed soon after, bringing with them advanced sensor technology that enhanced human stealth capabilities. The Corvan Confederacy contributed raw materials and manufacturing capacity. The Nexus Collective offered their expertise in quantum communications and electronic warfare. For the first time in galactic history, a coalition was forming specifically to resist hegemony integration. The Outer Rim territories, previously seen as disorganized and primitive, were uniting under human leadership to challenge 10,000 years of galactic order. The message that Admiral Chen transmitted to the Galactic Council on the eve of the invasion was simple and direct. It was broadcast on every communication frequency, transmitted to every hegemony installation, and distributed through every intelligence network humanity had built. To the galactic hegemony and all who serve its cause, the message began, Admiral Chen's image appearing on screens throughout civilized space. You have chosen war over peace, conquest over cooperation, and domination over freedom. You believe that your superior technology and overwhelming numbers guarantee your victory. Her expression hardened as the message continued. You are about to learn the difference between having weapons and being willing to use them. You are about to discover what happens when you threaten the survival of a species that has evolved through constant struggle. You are about to understand why humanity has never been conquered, never been broken, and never been enslaved. The transmission shifted to show images of human fleets massing throughout their territory, allied ships from dozens of species arriving at staging areas, and weapon systems that defied current understanding of physics. We did not want this war, Admiral Chen concluded. We offered friendship, trade, and peaceful coexistence. You chose to respond with invasion and attempted conquest. So be it. You want to see what humanity is capable of when our survival is threatened? You want to test our resolve against your superior numbers and advanced technology? Her smile was absolutely terrifying in its confidence. Come and find out. But remember, you started this war. When your fleets are burning and your worlds are in ruins, when your people are crying out for mercy and your leaders are begging for peace, remember that we offered you friendship and you chose war instead. The message ended with coordinates for the first major engagement. The heavily fortified Sol system, humanity's home, and the heart of their resistance. The invitation was clear. If the hegemony wanted to destroy humanity, they would have to go through Earth first. The galaxy held its collective breath as the largest military force in recorded history began its advance toward a small blue world that refused to surrender. Neither side fully understood what they had unleashed, but the entire future of galactic civilization hung in the balance. Humanity had sent their message to the galaxy. Now it was time to see if they could back it up with force of arms. The final battle for freedom was about to begin, and the outcome would determine whether the galaxy would continue under hegemony control or whether a new age of independence was about to dawn. The war to end all wars was coming to Earth, and humanity was ready.